Last time I promised you guys that I'd explain my jig for putting dovetails and pins in this kind of material, and I can't find half of the footage, which is this baby in action. Basically, two sides of the box got clamped in this jig, up and down, and the blade gets adjusted to that angle. I believe it was 7.5 degrees, and literally cuts through both of them at the same time. And that was pretty much the action for making the pins. And now we'll get to the dovetail jig, and that'll be more clear. Well, I've been working on this jig for milling these surfaces perfectly flat, because I'm not as good with a chisel as I would like to be. And I've got it here. Basically, I made it so that I routed this bit needs to be way down there, like it needs to go 3 centimeters down from this surface, so the shank is going to travel through there. And that's not enough to act as a fence in its own right, because it's spinning, it's going to wear it away. So I made it so it's got a mill of play, and my 2 fences there are fixed. Alright, but my challenge now is how do I set the height, because I can't really see too well. And then it just dawned on me, right? Grab a scrap piece of stock. Okay, so it looks like I need to come about 3 or 4 millimeters down, and we will be in the ballpark. Looks good to me. Let's see how we did. Okay, that's pretty clean. Well, now I've made a pass with my dovetail bit at the height that I determined, and I want to do another pass, and I discovered also that the mark that it left me is a perfect tool for lining it up. Well, I'm gonna go a millimeter over and then do the rest with a chisel. That's one half of the joint. Now we want the other half, and slide it over till we see it. And again, leave it about a mil shy. Now I feel like I don't need to clamp it at all. So let's see what happens if... To me, that looks pretty sweet. Well, let's double check. I don't think I could ask for a better result. What that's going to do is allow for just a tiny bit of these doves to protrude from the workpiece that it joins to, and then we can sand them all flush. There's no way I'd get it that flat with a chisel. No way. Not me. Some of the guys out there are wizards. Right now it's 4:42. When it turns 4:43, I'm going to start operations, and I just want to see how long it takes to make a there we go. Okay. Okay, let's see what time it is. In the interim, I had a phone call. I think it was 4:43 that we started. Now it's 4:54. Take away a minute for a phone call. That was 10 minutes. 10 minutes to clean those up. All right, now that our short sides are shaped with the dovetails, and they're exactly the same size because I machined them clamped together, it's time to go with the long sides, and this process is going to be a little bit different. First things first, I know the bottom one is square and exactly the dimension I want. The top one is a little bit larger, so I'm taking the router and I'm shaving them with a copy bit. On this bit, the bearing's down below as opposed to up on top, so it'll travel along the lower piece. Now it's time to cut the pins, and the reason they call them pins is because they go through these dovetails. So I want to make sure that the line between them is perfectly tight, which it is. As I mark them, I want to make sure that I write keep on every single pin that I don't want to remove. Okay, got my marks, got my X's, those are what I don't want, and on each X side of the line is where I want my blade to travel. So what's going to happen is I've got this jig that I made, and coming from this direction I can make all of those angled cuts. But then I've got to jump on the table and come from the other side and make all of these cuts. Okay, and when that's all done, I've got a hole that I relieved for the router, and the router can travel on a stable basis and clean up all those joints and mill them all perfectly flat, hopefully. It's exactly 2:30. I want to see how long it takes. I'm really glad I wrote those arrows because I'm already getting confused. Okay, that's one side. So far, we're looking good. In my last step, I'm going to be using this big monster, which will mill them all nice and flat. But I'm going to use a smaller router to remove the bulk of that meat, just because, you know, smaller bites is better than bigger bites. Get too greedy and you get breakouts and splinters and stuff. 20 minutes into the process, I've got them cleaned up to within, say, 8 millimeters of my destination depth. So now we're going to use the other side of the same jig, which has a hole relieved for the router. And we're going to plunge it in and clean them up. So I think it's safe to say that that whole operation takes inside of 30 minutes. I can see one spot that I missed. So now we get to see how lucky we got. Looks to me like it's pretty darn good. I don't want to get it in all the way because it's going to be tough to get it apart, and I still need to machine a groove in the bottom for the bottom to slide in, and I also need to put dovetails around the top here for the lid of it to attach. Those things all want to be separately processed before it gets glued together.